In our previous video we talked about our templates, and we're now going to begin to implement them, starting with our fixtures template. But we will of course be developing templates for all of our sections. Whenever I'm creating SQL statements in actual applications, I always try to put as much of the SQL within the SQL database as possible, rather than having huge complex SQL statements within the PHP code. And so we're going to use MySQL to create a view for our fixtures table. Specifically, we're going to select a few pieces of information to display within our new view. We're going to want the home team's name, the away team's name, the fixture date, the fixture time, and the referee who's going to actually officiate it. If you paid attention during our SQL creation stage, you'll notice that we don't actually have any fields within our databases called home team name or away team name. These are going to be aliases which we're going to create from different tables. The fixture date and fixture time are going to originate from our fixture table, while the referee name is going to come from our referee table. And so we're going to need to join some tables together. So because the main content within this view is going to be relating to the fixture, we're going to use the fixture as our main table. And then we're also going to inner join the referee table. And we're going to join them where the fixture referee ID is equal to the referee ID. We're then going to actually join our team table into this as well. And we're going to want to join this on the fixture home team. ID. And that's going to be when it's equal to the team's home ID, or rather the team's team ID. We're also going to want to join in our away team ID, but we've already used the team table, and so we can't inner join that again, unless we actually assign this to an alias. So we're going to call this home team. And that will allow us to copy and paste that across and change the home to away. We don't want all of the data to be returned, however. We just want it to be returned when the fixture is in the future. So to do that, we're just going to filter it by where the fixture date is after or equal to the current date. And because of the formatting we've used, we have to add 0, which will make the current date into the correct format to actually do the comparison. And then just for vanity reasons, we're just going to order this. First we're going to order it by the fixture date. Which we're going to sort ascending. We're then going to order it by the time of the fixture. Again, ascending. And then if we're still getting multiple results, we're going to order it by the home team name. Before we go ahead and turn this into a view, we can go ahead and actually test this. And so I'm just going to run the query now. And we're going to get this error, just because at the moment we're using home team name, when we have actually got to assign this to the full name. because we've used this alias, we need to build this statement back up. So we're going to do home team dot team name, and we're going to call that home team name. We're going to do the same as that for our away team. If we try to run this again now, and we can see that this fixture team should be fixture time. And then third time lucky, it works properly. So now that we're confident that our fixture field is working properly, we can turn this into a view. And we're going to call this Fixtures. Notice the S at the end. We're still going to have our fixture table, as in the singular version, but this view version is going to be the version that we're going to be interacting with within our actual application. And so we can go ahead and create this view, and then select all from fixtures, which is going to be our SQL statement being executed again, which is going to return the exact same results as when we actually run the query outside of it being a view. When we come across to our PHP code, and I'm just going to use the index page within the results section for testing again, we can delete all of this. All we need to do now is use the database object, and we can use our select statement, and we're just going to select all from fixtures. And again, just for simplicity, I'm just going to var dump this. And so if you go into our results page, which we've been using for testing, we can see all of the information which relates to each fixture in the future. And so our connection is working properly. Now the next thing we're going to need to do is to actually convert this actual var dump into something which looks a lot more like this, so that each section is split out properly. We can actually read and understand each section. And so to do that, we're going to create our Polymer template. So if we come across the NetBeans, I'm going to open up the model for the fixtures, the controller for the fixtures, and the actual view for the fixtures. For the view for the fixtures, we're basically going to delete everything that's in here at the moment, because that's all just a placeholder. And the next thing we're going to do is to go over to our fixtures model, and we're going to create a new function within this. Called get fixture data. Within here, we're going to establish a database connection. And then we're going to execute a query. So we're going to call this fixtures. And this is going to be a select command. In fact, before we actually get the fixture data, we're going to need to establish the actual dates of the fixtures. This is going to help us later on. So when we're getting the dates, we're just going to select all of the distinct entries within our fixtures view. So we're just going to simply type select distinct fixture date from fixtures. We're then going to create just an empty array called fixtures. And then we're going to use all of the dates returned by this select statement to actually search for the actual fixtures for each week. And this will allow us to create all of the distinct sections within our fixtures template which we used earlier on. So I'm just going to type for I equals 0 until I is less than the count of the dates, and we're going to increase I. So let's say this is where we're going to use this fixtures select statement. But instead of just assigning fixtures to this, we're actually going to push all of the results into an array. So the entire results from each select statement will be an element within our fixtures array. So to actually come onto the fixture statement itself, I'm just going to spread this out just to make it more easy to read. So we're going to select the following fields from the fixtures table, or the fixtures view rather. The home team name, the away team name, the fixture time, and the referee name. And we are actually going to want to select the actual date that the fixture is going to take place on. The problem is we don't want to output it in the same format that it's stored in our database. At the moment it's stored in our database in a format like this, where we have the year as the first 4 digits, then the month as the second 2 digits, and the day as the actual last 2 digits. So to actually format this, we're going to use the date format command within SQL, which just takes one parameter and then a second parameter, which is the output format. And I'm going to use the format %a space %M space %y, capital Y rather, and we're going to output that as fixture date. Remember that if you don't set an alias here, SQL will actually use this as the column header, as the name of this column, which is obviously not going to be very useful to us. So now that we have our outputs, we can select our from. I'm going to do this on a separate line, again just to make it easier to read. And we're going to select all of this information from the fixtures view, where the fixture date is equal to dates, and we're going to look for the specific instance of this that we're looping through, and we're specifically going to look for the fixture date field. Just for completeness sake, I'm going to actually append the final semicolon onto there as well, and that shouldn't have a semicolon at the end. Now this fixtures that we've been adding all of our data to up here isn't actually accessible outside of this function at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're just going to return the array, which means that whenever we call this method, it's going to pass this information back to us. And to actually transfer that across to our view, we're going to need to amend our controller. So all we need to do, this view fixtures data equals this model get fixtures data. So this is basically acting as a bridge between the view and the actual model. So if we go to our actual view now, and we type We just raw dump it for now. And it's accessible under this fixtures data. So if we go back to our browser now and go to the fixtures page, we can see that we've got this error. We've called it get fixture as in the singular, not the plural. So if we refresh this now, we're going to get all of our output data, and it's all going to be grouped into each week. So this first element is going to have 10 elements within it. Then we're going to have our second element, which is going to have the next 10 elements. It only happens to be 10 elements because that's how many fixtures we have each week. If we had less or more fixtures per week, we would obviously have the corresponding amount of elements per array entry. So all of this is great, but all we've actually done so far is make the data accessible to us within our view. We haven't actually started on our template yet, so we should start on that now. So within the public folder, I'm going to create a new folder called elements. And within that, I'm going to create another folder called stretch fixture. Which is going to be the name of our actual template which we're going to create. And then we're going to create a new HTML file called stretch fixture. This is a naming convention that Google uses within its elements, and so I'm just going to mirror it on our elements. So I'm going to delete this template because we don't need it. So whenever we're creating a new element, the first thing that we need to do is link to the Polymer library. So to do that, we just type link, and we're not going to import a style sheet. We're going to actually import and the URL in this case is going to be our components polymer.html. We're also going to be using the paper shadow element within our new element that we're creating, and so we need to link to that as well. Which is in bower components, paper shadow, paper shadow.html. So now we have access to actually use and manipulate Polymer and the paper shadow within this element. And so to create our own element, we need to type Polymer -element. We need to set a name for it, which we're going to call stretch fixture. We're going to set some attributes, and we're going to pass across the heading and the actual fixtures. And these are just space separated. And then we're going to create our template. So the very first thing that Polymer recommends you do within your element, your new template, is to create a style. We'll create the tags for that now, but we will come back and style that at the end. So the very first actual element within our section that we're going to create is a paper shadow. And within that, we're going to have a head array, and we're going to actually output our heading here. And to output our heading, all we do is open two curly braces, type the name of the attributes that we want to echo out, and then two closing curly braces. If you remember back to our actual template, we then have a table, which has a table head, with 5 different columns. We have the home column, we have a column which says VS, a column for the away team, the kick-off time, and the referee name. We then have a table body, and this is where our template starts to get a bit more interesting. So we're actually going to embed a second template within this. But instead of just having a blank template, we're going to set this to repeat. And the condition that we're going to set it to repeat is for every F in fixtures. So when Polymer comes to process this, it's going to look through fixtures to see how many elements are within it, and it's going to repeat the contents of this template as many times as necessary, which will give us every row that we need to output. So for every row, we need to create a table row, and then a couple of table data sections. Should be 5 in total to match up with our column headers. The first one we're going to echo out is the home team name. I'm going to just copy and paste this. So the second one will be the VS, so we shouldn't actually have this template here. The third one will be the away team name. The fourth one will be the kickoff. Which is actually called fixture time. And we have the referee name. Now to actually make Polymer recognise this as being a template, we need to do one more thing, which is to create a script tag. And within here, we're going to type Polymer, the name of the element, and then an anonymous function, or rather an object. Now we're not quite finished with this element yet, we need to actually implement it. So if I go back across to the view page, because we have all of this data in an array, we can use the array to actually call our new function as many times as we're going to need. So the first thing to do is to create a link to our new element, and we're going to import that, and the href is going to be /public elements stretch fixture stretch fixture.html. And you do need to use this command to actually import every element before you use it, but you do only need to do it once. As I say, because we've got all of our data in this array now, we can use this to actually create all of the elements that we're going to need. And so all I'm going to do is just create another for loop. That's what's called a fixture data. Fixtures data. And we're actually going to use PHP almost as a templating engine in this case. So we're going to close the PHP tag and then reopen the PHP tag after what will be our HTML. So here we're going to type stretch fixture and our heading attribute will go here. We will also have our fixtures, and then we will close our stretch fixture element. I'm just going to put this onto multiple lines because this is going to get slightly longer. So with our heading, we're going to echo out some PHP. And we're going to echo out this fixtures data. And we're going to echo out the I element. We're always going to echo out the first element, which is going to correspond to the date, so we can actually reference the date specifically. I'm going to bring this down onto the next line because we're going to do something similar with our fixtures data. I'm going to echo out this fixtures data, and we're just going to echo out everything for the I record. So as it stands, this second fixtures line isn't going to work properly for us. Fixtures data at the moment is just a PHP array. We're going to actually need to convert that into something that can be transmitted through HTML as the value for an attribute. And so to do that, we're going to first encode it into JSON. This, however, still presents us with a problem because this JSON output is still going to be a multiple line output. With HTML, the values for any attributes must be a single line. And so we're going to encode this again. Using the raw URL encode functionality. Now if we go back to our stretch fixture element, we're going to need to decode that. We're going to have a ready function. And what we're going to do is we're going to assign this .fixtures to JSON parse the decoded URL component. JavaScript calls this a URI component, and it's going to be the this.fixture elements that we're decoding. So if we come back to our page now and refresh, we're going to see that we have this error, and that's because we have made a mistake when we're encoding our data. They should all be one word. As you can see here, we've actually made a typing mistake. Import should be import. So if we save that and refresh our page now, you can see that we have all of this data, but our actual elements aren't showing up within our table yet. So if we go back to our element now, and we've actually made the typing mistake here, dead code here should be decode URI component. So this time we should see all of the data. Now the last thing that we need to do is style all of these. This obviously doesn't look very good at the moment. We're first going to come back across here and set the table to the class data. A really powerful feature within web components and Polymer is the fact that each of these elements, all of the custom elements that you can create, are all sandboxed from the rest of the page. So if we refresh this now, these elements aren't obviously styled, despite the fact that they are the class data, which is already styled within our main style sheet. So if we open up our main style sheet, you can see that table.data does have a style assigned to it. And this is obviously, as I say, just because of the sandboxing that Polymer puts in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually style this page specifically based on the style that we created earlier. And we obviously need to make our paper elements. Background white. In fact, we'll go back and crop all of this across from our main style sheet. So if we refresh this again now, we don't have paper elements, we have paper shadow. And now everything's styled as it was before. In our template, we did actually have these names as links. We can go ahead, in fact, and just put placeholders in there. And because we obviously have our sandbox environment again, we can style these again uniquely. So I'll copy the actual link styling across again. Now these look a lot better. And so now our first template is more or less finished. The final few changes that we need to make specifically to the links we can't make yet, but we will come back to them, as I say, in the future. In the next section, we're going to be styling our results page, which is obviously going to be very similar to our fixtures page, although we haven't done any template work for this yet. As I say, it's going to be essentially the same as this, but we're also going to include the scores for both teams, and we're not going to include the kickoff times or the referee. So make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss it. It's going to display all of our fixtures correctly for us. We don't actually want these to be links, but we do want the team names to be links, so we'll go back and change that now.